Okay, this is a question that a lot of my clients ask. Should we settle a case or go to trial? And here's some arguments for both. There's the certainty and control of predicting outcomes in settlement and removing that from the jury, because the juries can be unpredictable. So you can have control over the terms for both parties negotiating an agreement. Another one is time efficiency, quicker resolution. Sometimes it takes a long time to get to trial, weeks or months, actually sometimes years longer to go to trial. Sometimes these things settle at the time of trial or a week or two before. So there's less disruption in your life, and then there's some discovery disputes that can be problematic in trials as well. So there's can be some savings there. There can be some cost savings, less expense for expert witness testimony, getting doctors and witnesses to come in. So there could be a lot of less expenses there. There's no risk of an adverse judgment. Sometimes trials are like rolling the dice. Sometimes you win big, sometimes you don't win as big, and sometimes you don't win at all. It depends on what the jury thinks. So having something and a certainty versus a possibility is sometimes a reason people go into settlement rather than go to trial. Sometimes it's a privacy issue. The client wants their privacy. They don't want it to be announced to everybody what's going on in a public court. So avoid reputation of harm. So sometimes people like to settle versus going into litigation and to trial. So they're concerned about the publicity of it. Arguments against settlement would be possibly lower compensation if you settle. Because a lot of times if you go to trial, there's a possibility of a higher settlement versus a low ball offer. And sometimes insurance companies force you to trial, just so you know, because they just won't give you enough to make it reasonable. So you actually can just keep going towards trial and or try the case. Going to trial can establish a legal accountability and a public record against the harms that somebody has caused. Sometimes plaintiffs want to show that to the public, right? So that nobody else gets harmed by the plaintiff, or by the defendant, sorry. Or personal satisfaction to have your day in court. I don't care what happens, I just want my day in court, which ultimately people do care what happens. They want a good judgment for themselves, but anyway, sometimes they just want to be vindicated and feel better because they got to have their day in court and explain to the jury what happened. But there's also risks of losing, that uncertainty of outcome that can be problematic. And it can be sometimes if you lose, then there's an appeal process, and that can take a lot of time. It can take years to go through the appellate process. There's the length of stress, apprehension, all that kind of stuff, because your case is ongoing. And sometimes it can be overburdensome. And reliving the trauma and the testifying about it and the public and having the scrutiny, and it's painful for clients, and so that's a difficulty. Costs will go. Trials can range from 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, hundreds of thousands, depending on your experts, what you pay, and depending on the complexity of the trial. So those can drive up costs. So really, whether you should settle a case or whether you should try a case, really have a heart-to-heart with your attorney. Look into your heart and see if it's something that you really want to do. Obviously, if sometimes you're forced into it, because if the insurance company's not willing to settle for a reasonable amount, you have to press them. You have to go further, and don't just take a lowball offer and be satisfied with that when you're injured. So make sure you talk to your attorney, get the right attorney that's going to fight for you, and I wish you the very best.